Life in the Panhandle Plains at the beginning of the 21st century. Where the environment shapes how people meet their basic needs. Food, water, shelter, and clothing. Using transportation and trade to obtain goods made outside the area. Where the environment also shapes their sense of who they are and what they believe and how they express themselves. A process which has been repeating itself for a very long time. Archaeological evidence tells us that people have been here for the last 14,000 years. All adapting in ways both similar and different to this unique environment that is the Panhandle Plains. Millions of years ago, eroded sediment from the Rocky Mountains spread out across the region, creating the plains. Wind and water carved deep canyons, and in the walls of these canyons is written a rich geologic history. Layer upon layer of rock built up over enormous passages of time. The Spanish referred to the region as El Llano, the plain. A great, vast sweep of plateau, mysterious, sometimes forbidding, often exquisitely beautiful. Today, the Panhandle Plains is made up of the Texas Panhandle and nearby lands in Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Kansas. In all seasons, weather here can be as dramatic as the landscape. The summer sun can be scorching, but for much of the year, the southern plains enjoys mild to pleasant weather. As every culture that has lived here has had to appreciate, water is precious across this semi-arid region. The Canadian is the only major river that crosses the Texas Panhandle. Underground is the Ogallala Aquifer. Although it's fairly shallow, it's one of the largest underground supplies of water in the world, and the most important source of water in the area for drinking and irrigation. Natural depressions called playas dot the landscape. They catch rainfall and provide critical watering holes for wildlife, including nearly 500,000 wintering sandhill cranes. The Panhandle Plains sustains habitats for a rich diversity of wildlife. Among the many species that thrive here are pronghorn, golden eagles, western meadowlarks, prairie dogs, rattlesnakes. Much of that habitat is grasslands, millions upon millions of acres, buffalo grass, blue grama, and many other species. Frontiersman Albert Pike wrote in 1832,
"The prairie's sublimity arises from its unbounded extent, its barren desolation, its strange power of deception, its power of throwing a man back upon himself."
To survive in such a challenging environment, all living things must adapt. The stories of human adaptation are told through our creations: tools, clothing, pottery, music, poetry, religion. These artifacts speak of technology, the way people exploit their environment; of sociology, the way people interact with others; of ideology, the way people understand their world. A single object can be viewed in any of these ways. A piece of pottery, for example, speaks of the technology with which it was made, the sociology of who made it and how it was traded between groups, the ideology of how it was used, and the belief system it reflects. And artifacts tell another story too, of how the same basic human needs were satisfied differently over time, and what these differences tell us about the cultures that produced these objects. By looking at artifacts closely, we can begin to understand more about the history and culture of the many nomadic people who have inhabited or exploited the Panhandle Plains. 14,000 years ago, early people used chipped stones to hunt big game, giant bison, and mammoth. As with all human civilizations, sources of water helped determine where they lived. By AD 1150, some people had settled in villages, building houses of stone, mud, and sticks. Along watercourses of the southern plains, they cultivated corn, beans, and squash, using hoes made from bison scapulae or shoulder blades. These early farmers also produced tools that they could trade for items not found in the region. Great herds of bison roamed the southern plains, as many as 8 million. Perhaps nowhere else on Earth was one mammal so well adapted to its environment. These huge animals became the mainstay of the Indians, their source of shelter, food, tools, and clothing. By the 1500s, Indians had readapted to the southern plains as nomads, following the bison, moving their camps with travois pulled by dogs. Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, looking for gold, brought the first Europeans into the region in 1541. In a letter to the King of Spain, he wrote,
"I have done all that I possibly could to serve your Majesty, and to discover a country where God our Lord might be served. There were none of the things of which we had been told. There is not any gold, nor any other metal, nothing but little villages."
For the next 3 centuries, Spain claimed this territory, but finding no gold or silver, they left little mark beyond place names like Paladuro, Llano Estacado, and Casas Amaritas. And one other enduring legacy, the horse. For the Southern Plains Indians, horses changed everything. They became superb horsemen, and many new tribes ventured onto the Southern Plains from the north and west. Apache, Comanche, Kiowa Apache, Southern Cheyenne, Southern Arapaho. They could all follow the bison more swiftly and move camp more easily. Like others before them, these horse nomads also developed a sophisticated trade network and led raiding parties, sometimes deep into Mexico. During the 19th century, the United States government dispatched a series of explorers to the plains to map its geography and record its flora and fauna. One of these early explorers, Captain Randolph B. Marcy, wrote in 1849,
"It was a vast, illimitable expanse of desert prairie, the dreaded Llano Estacado of New Mexico, or, in other words, the Great Sahara of North America. It spreads forth into a treeless, desolate waste of uninhabited solitude, which always has been and must continue uninhabited forever."
Once mapped, however, the plains became less forbidding, and the lure of wealth enticed Euro-American bison hunters. In the early 1870s, thousands of men flocked to the plains with powerful rifles. A Kiowa woman described the slaughter.
"Up and down the plains those men ranged, shooting sometimes as many as 100 buffalo a day. They took their loads to the new railroad stations that were being built to be shipped east to market. Sometimes there would be a pile of bones as high as a man, stretching a mile along the railroad track."
Within a few years, bison were nearly extinct. The fate of the Southern Plains Indians was linked with that of the bison. As settlers coveted their lands, the federal government waged a continuing series of battles against them, and eventually confined them to reservations in present-day Oklahoma. Without bison, the threat of starvation defeated the Indians more than battle. With the bison gone, and the Indians gone, the grasslands became an irresistible lure. to Hispanic sheep herders known as pastores, cattle, and cowboys. Thousands of longhorns roamed the open range. They were herded in massive roundups and monumental trail drives to railheads and northern pastures. The introduction of windmills and barbed wire in the early 1880s transformed the southern plains into fenced ranches as cattlemen claimed title to lands that nomadic Indians once called home. The Panhandle Plains changed quickly. Stagecoach routes crossed the region, then railroads. Towns were established and counties organized into governments. By the early 1900s, farms developed, along with new forms of trade and transportation. Throughout the last 100 years, people have continued to adapt to the southern plains in ways both similar and different to their predecessors. And just like cultures that have come before us, the things we do today and the artifacts we create continue to speak of technology, of ideology, and of sociology. And although who we are today seems so different from the people who have lived here before us, we all have faced the same challenge, sustaining our lives and livelihoods in the unique and often harsh environment of the Panhandle Plains.